Well, good morning. Thanks, Linda. And thank you all and welcome to the Department of Transportation. I hope you have a great visit here, whether you are a frequent flyer, so to speak, or whether this is the first time we've been able to host you. And I'm really glad we're coming together at this time on this topic. We tried to arrange a nice day for you here in DC, and I know that you'll be spending time with some of our key colleagues who are working on these issues as you are. One thing that I reflect on whenever I come in here is why this department exists. This is, in the grand scheme of things, a relatively young department. It was established in the 1960s. You can see all of our predecessors my predecessors back to the first in their portraits on that wall. And across the many things we work on, the basic reason why this department exists is safety. It's the reason we have a Department of Transportation. A lot of things we work on, but at the end of the day, nothing is more essential than safety. And we work on that in every mode of transportation, right? Railroad safety is a hot topic right now in the country, and the main order of business is to compress the number of accidental fatalities from the single digits to zero, and with that, hazardous material incidents. In aviation, form of transportation that involves millions of people going through the air in a metal tube several miles above the surface of the ground at the speed of, almost at the speed of sound, propelled by highly flammable fuels. In a typical year, the number of passenger fatalities is zero. And our work is to keep it that way and to make sure that the number of close calls, and by close call we usually mean an airplane came within 4,000 feet of another airplane when it wasn't supposed to, also goes to zero. And then in roadway deaths in this country, as many people as can fill a passenger jet lose their lives every day. 40,000 people, a level of death and destruction comparable to gun violence and unfavorably comparable to the level of death and injury that happens in so many other developed countries. And I know I'm almost literally preaching to the choir on this, but I just want to invoke why we're all here, which is that it doesn't have to be that way. And you are among the leaders in making sure that the country comes to understand that it doesn't have to be this way. So we're part of a level of concerted action to meet what is a top priority, certainly for this administration's tenure at the Department of Transportation, which is to reverse the rise in roadway deaths. And that just might be starting to happen. Far too soon to say that it is. But the first step in reversing the rise is to stop the rise, and we seem to be seeing the recent rise leveling off a little bit. So, we've got to do everything that we can to not only sustain that fact that it seems not to be going up anymore, but of course to bring it back down. It's why we launched the National Roadway Safety Strategy. It's why for the first time we officially adopted our safe systems approach. Safer speeds, safer roads, safer people, safer vehicles, and a better standard of post-crash care. And while that vision, I think, was very important to lay out, to document, to officially commit to, what's really giving it life is the commitments that you and the organizations that you lead or represent have made. Dozens of companies, agencies, organizations, jurisdictions have been stepping up in response to the call to action that went along with that roadway safety strategy. DoorDash exploring new tools to keep their drivers safe. Families for Safer Streets, creating manuals to educate decision makers on safety issues. Transit agencies improving the safety in the vicinity of bus stops. So many more who are pioneering new approaches to data, community outreach and education, cross-sector collaboration to save lives. And the ultimate goal, which we have also made a point of adopting, is to get traffic deaths down to the only acceptable number, which is zero. And I know a lot of people look at us a little funny when we talk about zero, because it is so difficult to imagine and because it's not something that's going to happen overnight. But one thing I think is very important to remember is that there are communities that have demonstrated that zero is possible, including right here in the United States. Jersey City last year, second largest city in America's most densely populated state, saw 0 traffic deaths on its roads. Not far from there, Hoboken had their 4th straight year of 0 traffic deaths. And this isn't just something in densely populated East Coast cities. Cities like Evanston, Illinois, and Edina, Minnesota have gone multiple years without a single traffic death. They are not the biggest cities in the United States, but they are not the smallest either, and they are telling us something. So we need to learn from success stories, and that's part of why we're here today. Often the answers are simple. Simple is not the same thing as easy, but often the answers are relatively simple. Proven solutions like safer speed limits, especially in residential areas, protected bike lanes and bus lanes that are not a frill on a transportation project, they're a life-saving measure. Curb extensions, high visibility crosswalks, more frequent traffic signals, and a whole lot more. Under President Biden's leadership, we have a level of funding that we've never had before to help spread and replicate those proven solutions across the country. In February, we announced our first round of Safe Streets and Roads for All grants, which are advancing safety efforts at the local level by funding the improvements that are needed in communities representing over half of all Americans, if you include the many planning grants that we've been able to do. New Mexico, for example, I was there not long ago, highest rate of pedestrian fatalities in the nation. Had a chance to visit the Albuquerque area where we're adding a raised median streetlights, protected bike lanes, measures along Coors Boulevard, which is one of the deadliest stretches of highway in the nation. And I'm happy to say that applications for the second round of this funding are open as we speak. And I know many of the communities you engage with are looking at how to do that. In addition to getting more funding out the door for safety projects, we're also using our rulemaking power to improve road safety wherever we can. I'm pleased to share that just yesterday, NHTSA proposed a new rule that would require automatic emergency braking systems on new vehicles, preventing tens of thousands of injuries and hundreds of deaths every single year. Just as life-saving innovations from past generations like seatbelts and airbags are now very much the norm and have saved countless lives, we believe that AEBs on cars and trucks will go a very long way toward making our roads safer. I also want to mention that NHTSA is working on updating the flagship new car assessment program, which rates how safe new cars are every year. Just recently, we opened the floor for public comments on adding pedestrian crash tests to the program to measure how well cars are protecting people outside of the vehicle as well as inside. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but for you all to make your voices heard in the Federal Register will be an important part of how that input gets onto the record. Because we all know that the consequence of the design of a vehicle and making good on the principle of safer vehicles must in some way account not only for those who are in it, but for anybody who encounters it. I worry that America has become inured to traffic deaths precisely because they are so widespread. The fact that every one of us can think of multiple people we know who lost their lives in car crashes makes us a bit like a society that has been going through a war, and we're just used to it. And I know so many of you have stories, have shared stories, have worked to get the country's and policymakers' attention with stories of what has happened. But it's the simple fact that everybody has some kind of story that shows us how widespread the problem is and how we will have to shift our very mentality around traffic safety to make progress. I believe that shift is now underway. I believe that shift is underway because of the work that you have been doing. And I believe that because of the work that you are going to be doubling down on and enriching in today's proceedings, we will be able to look back on the 2020s as a period that saw major and material change in this scourge that the country faces. We need to get to a place where it sounds archaic to talk about routine loss of life to traffic deaths, the same way we would today think about widespread fatalities in the United States because of cholera or dysentery. I think we are putting this country on a path toward doing that. But I also know that we can't do it without you. This administration and this department, in our bones, are committed to getting this work done, but we're here because we know that we're only one piece of the puzzle across all of the levels of government, outside of government, in the private sector, the public sector, the social sector, and that's why the commitments that you have made are so important. So I know that you're spending the day with our colleagues, some of the best policy leaders in the country on these issues. Given the big news this week in particular, I want to recognize Ann Carlson, who's been doing such terrific work in leadership at NHTSA, and with her and so many others from the department, I know you're in for a great day. I know this is a heavy topic. It is also an incredibly rewarding one because we are saving lives. There are some areas where when you save lives, you get a medal. There are others where the greatest satisfaction of this work will be in a form of life-saving that nobody will even know happened. And that's the point. As Polly, our Deputy Secretary, said yesterday, it's the seat that is not empty at the dinner table because of the work we did. And I know you draw satisfaction from the meaning of that good work. So thank you. Welcome again to DOT. Enjoy each other's company, and I really look forward to hearing about the commitments, the insights, and the progress that comes out of today. Welcome again.
Promised you all a selfie.
It didn't happen unless we got a picture, I guess.
He's better at this than I am.
All right, we're immortalized. Thank you, everybody.